Hello, and welcome to a session about vibe coding, the strategic impact for your business. I'm Seb, and I'm nice to meet you, and I'm super glad to be here today. So let's dive straight into it. Let's talk about vibe coding and the strategic impact for your business. So I'd like to put, first of all, this vibe into brackets because I don't think really it is about vibing. I think more about that it is AI-driven development, and that changes it for your business because it's about being professional when you have these tools that were initially classified more of like just go with the flow and build with AI without really looking at it and see what it turns out. It's definitely nice to prototype and spin up an idea in 2 minutes, but the ultimate potential that AI-driven development brings, which some people refer to vibe coding, is far beyond this just vibe into it thing. So let's take a look today at what this means for your business. I like to phrase this always into this metaphor. Who came here today riding a horse to work? It's like kind of like cereal, right? Like who would ride nowadays a horse to work? I think you know where we're getting, right? So change has always been there. And with this change, also new technologies emerge, and people sometimes refer to new technologies with like disrespect, and also with a lot about change and mindsets like, well, this is not as good as I could be if I could code it, or this has risk. All of these things we will address today, but before this, let's get to a joint definition. When I say coding, I nowadays mean coding, not vibe coding or AI coding. Anything else than AI coding is legacy coding, and this is something that is so fundamentally important because AI coding is the only way. If you're not using AI to develop, this is kind of like giving developers coding tests without letting them access Stack Overflow in 2014. This is just not the right thing anymore. So AI coding is definitely the right thing to have strategic business impact. And it goes beyond this. So we will dive into this today. Let's take a look before who am I, what am I doing at work, and where am I leading certain topics at. I'm Sebastian Mertens, and I have 10 years of experience in AI and automation. It started back then in 2015, 2016, when we were automating OCR topics in banking with RPA, and we're coding Python servers, Python scripts to launch them, or even had back then a 3.11 Windows machine, which we needed to turn into an Windows 10, I think it was back then. But anyway, is a lot of experience. I've seen a lot of things. I've been building AI agents before they were actually cool. I remember my first decision-making agent building in 2017 when we were automating some Instagram social media interaction topics. And I've been founding 2 companies, which I both exited, and there has been also SaaS solutions in them, but it's also been consulting companies. And nowadays I am working at Make.com as head of AI or applied AI for product topics. I'm a developer heart and soul. I'm a really technical product person. And when I'm not working, I really like cooking, traveling, and sport when not coding. And one of my passions is teaching what I know, teaching and making people greater and succeed in their professional life. That's also what me as a leader really inspires every day, to see other people grow and get there. So let's dive into now the agenda for today. So for me, it's really important to understand why AI coding changed everything. I was when I introduced, a bit provocative. It's important because I got your intention. Now let's go a bit deeper into real facts and into real understanding why it has changed everything. And then for, of course, you as a leader or as a user in the company, it's really important to understand how you can approach it and how you can actually utilize it. On the second topic is how to get started, what to do, and how to really be hands-on. And of course, I always like to give a little bit of an outlook and to open this for a little discussion. So let's take a breath and let's dive into why AI coding changes everything that we know. So let me ask a simple question again. When was the last time you used a CD-ROM? Might have been years. If you're not working at, let's say, legal teams in Germany, where they still need to ship CD-ROMs to legal courts, I don't think that you've been using CD-ROMs in quite a while. Maybe in your car, if it's an old car and you have CD-ROMs in there, but to store data on it, you probably use your iCloud, Google Drive for private purposes, or use SharePoint and Google Drive for business purposes. Some of you might have private instances on VPN and things like this to access data, but ultimately you're not storing or sending or putting files from A to B in your business context on CD-ROM or USB sticks anymore. So let me ask a different question. Let's go even further more back in timeline. When did you the last time get connected when calling someone? There's been over 1 million people in America that have been connecting, routing people when they called. From, for example, San Francisco to New York, you had to get routed. I don't remember that. For me, this is history. I never experienced this. So for my kid who will grow up right now, they will never probably experience how it was looking up Stack Overflow, how it was without coding, without an LLM, without AI assistive coding, or even AI being an architect in there and writing the code. It's important that you understand the fundamentals and review it, how telecommunication works. If you call somebody, that you dial in your line, you get the routing, etc., etc. But ultimately, it becomes more of like a convenient user piece. And the actual job that has been powering for 1 million people got removed. So now if you think about this technology progress there, it's the same with AI coding nowadays. We could go even one more step back. When did you ride the last time with a horse to work, right? That's probably something, maybe for fun you did. It's absolutely adventurous, but I think for professional terms, especially early in the morning, you just want to get from A to B, right? So, hey, let's dive into it. Let's really think about this technology progress and what this means for us as businesses and why this is such a strategic topic and such strategic impact in our businesses. So, we can definitely agree, I hope, on one thing. Progress is the only constant. If we're thinking about 12,000 years back with agricultural revolution, 500 years Gutenberg inventing book printing, nowadays, if we're thinking about progress, it becomes faster, faster, faster. And therefore, of course, resistance in companies always rises. And of course, if you're thinking about AI implementation in businesses, this has strategic impact because strategic impact is risk, where things could go wrong. So we need to prevent it. But on the other side, we need to learn how we can measure, contain, and actually steer risk in businesses. So progress becomes the only constant how we as a business survive. And that's what keeps me thinking about it, implementing testing growth frameworks at Solonis/Make, which is one of the top process mining enterprises in the world that serves nearly all S&P 500 companies around. So for us, implementing AI is something really, really carefully it needs to be done. But nevertheless, we want to be super innovative and we need to serve progress as the only constant for our business to keep going. So when thinking about this, how do we actually get to the point where we can say, why is AI coding everything? What is it changing? What does it do actually? So why is this so important? Let's dive really into the details that we can quantify and that I, as a professional, can quantify from my work. And I'm also interacting there with some professors from some universities in Germany and in the United States to actually understand how this changes everything. And there's 3 things that I can write nowadays down that I've been learning and that we in also my community that's super AI focused, we're interacting with OpenAI, Claude, and all of these companies can really agree on is innovation becomes a commodity because everybody can start building, everybody becomes a builder, and even that they're not actually building, LLMs are building for them. Then one of the pieces that gets really hit right now is all these micro SaaS tools, because you as a company, you become, and Elna Werner says it like, you become your own customer's competitor. So this is something, just think about it. You were previously purchasing at a company, but now you're becoming their competitor because you can actually build the software yourself. This is something that has never been there. Even with the promise of low and no code, you had to be kind of like a user of a software platform. Now you can just build your software solution. Of course, you could use Lovable, Bold, and things like this to be user of Bold and Lovable, but ultimately you're becoming the software as a service company's own competitor. And this is why micro SaaS costs probably go against 0 in the near future. And now, just think about the risk decrease in the long run. This is something I will go from a methodology point of view into this by also looking back at history and what happened in the history. But first of all, let's dive deeper into what really means innovation and why this topic of AI coding / some people refer to it still as vibe coding becomes the innovation commodity for your business. So the question is always like, how can we accelerate the learning? Even if you're, let's say, Procter & Gamble, even if you're Johnson & Johnson, like these really traditional companies. If you think about hey, well, if our logo would change, if our printing would change, how can you iterate this? How can you become faster? This is something that you can only do really well with AI, because you can play out 10,000s of variations on your social medias theoretically. And you can actually learn faster. And you're probably going to do this in code. So actually, the way how you can accelerate learning is to achieve more and faster product market fit, especially software as a service companies. This is like the thing they always want to achieve fast, product market fit, to see, okay, this product gets really adopted on the market and gets consumed. This is something, it only holds true for, does not only hold true for product companies, it also holds true for service companies that service products or just generally services. When you find a market that really hits ground, where you think, okay, well, I now have my customer, I know exactly my ICP, I know where to go, you can go now faster by actually using AI, because your validations of our beliefs, what to build and what to measure with data, you can now build faster and you can iterate faster, even if it is really a service. Let's take, for example, catering. Right now, a friend of mine is working in catering. He has a catering business, and he says, well, if I could, with AI, offer various forms and various iterations of this form, I could test where is actually my customer going when they are applying or registering for catering service. So this is something where he actually now starts using AI in his business. So he iterates on his product market fit, even if he's not really having a product, but rather a service. So it is all about learning, running experiments, and failing forward, as Mark Zuckerberg always says. Testing what really works. This leads us to the right product market fit. Now, let's take this even further. So imagine you can prototype this catering service, or you could prototype for your software as a service solution. Now, if you, as a product person or as a marketing person, salesperson, you could test something out before it goes to the actual developer. This would be really cool, right? Or you as a developer use it to actually build something really faster. And yes, of course, there's challenges when it comes to product design, because you're all going to use AI tooling. Well, it's also regarding security. We'll touch later on this. There's, of course, challenges, but challenges has been always propelling progress in the past. So when you're now thinking about your competitor who really takes a long time to prototype, well, without dev tooling, without AI dev tooling, the prototype is ready after 2 to 3 sprints, while the competitor is already halfway through product market fit, because they can iterate in a day. And this is something that is so fundamentally important, that AI is not just like spitting out code. No, if you do it right, it really enables you to learn faster, to build faster, and to validate faster. And yes, these solutions really work and they are really secure and they can scale. Of course, you as a professional, you need to know and you need to observe what AI does. And this is something really important. It's for me clear, whatever you do, if you are observing a junior person, you are responsible that this person does a good job. And this does not change with AI. It gets even more strengthened, this position. Just think about it. You are, as a senior, even in a junior position, you are responsible to question what AI produced. So when people say, well, web coding doesn't work, well, I say, you're not observing the person's or the LM's output good enough. So when you do this, you can actually scale faster. Now, let's really take a look at this. So with AI dev tooling, you can scale faster to your product market fit. We iterate faster as our development speed increases. And this holds true for any kind of service where you have digital interactions, because you can generate them nowadays with AI. If it is marketing, if it is sales, if it is development, or if it is within support, for example. Now, innovation as a commodity is really driven by learning as fast as possible and using AI development faster to product market fit. Let's save this, because this is one of our key learnings now. Now, when we're thinking about AI development and as fast as possible, we also now have to zoom out what this means. If you think about it, what it means really for companies is that you could feel it. And I think there's no better way to actually prototype this and interact with it to actually prove what we've just seen. So now let's do following. Let's generate a form where we have various variations of the form and where we actually need to get some input to. So therefore, I'm going to Lovable, because it's one of the most straightforward platforms. I'm going to say, generate me a form that changes the language based on user selection. Just use standard contact form with one additional field, service type. Service types are banking products. Let's do it like this. Use black and white, and just take assumptions. I do not recommend that you say this. I do this today because we only have a certain period of time. I would not recommend you to take assumptions because it might go really badly. But in this case, I would do it to just tell the LLM, well, if you're not sure, just take a decision. Yeah? Okay, while this is now building, it's gonna take a second and to actually choose languages. I'm curious which languages we'll choose because we did not specify this. Now let's go back to our topic. While this is generating, we are also gonna build more at the end of this session. So now let's go to the second learning that we identified in our why process, and that's SaaS cost going against zero. Just imagine what you've seen now. If everybody builds over time, the cost must decrease because everybody can build their custom solution. So if you're offering just an off-the-shelf software as a service solution, you will actually have a hard time to sell into the market where a lot of customization is happening. You will never be the right product for the specific customer needs because everybody builds, everybody makes it better, everybody makes it faster. This is something where we can see in the long run, in the history, this led to actually decreasing software costs. Now, you might say, well, I did not put micro-SaaS there. Right now, this is just for like these smaller toolings. If you think about like Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, they offer a suite of tools. This is really, really hard to address and to attack because ultimately they have such a huge barrier or moat in the market, which is right now definitely not something you can achieve with SaaS or AI generated SaaS solution. But for example, if you are offering like a QR code ordering system, or if you are offering, for example, a translation service, or if you're offering, for example, contact or a form builder, you really gotta have a challenge because it is really hard becoming defensible. And if we have a bit more time, I will dive into this if you have questions in the discussion and Outlook, because there's more data to this. Now, what does it mean in terms of SaaS solution that will be produced? And this holds also true for your company. You previously had probably like maybe 50 to 100 SaaS solutions. If you're like an SMB company, if you're a global enterprise, you probably have 500 to 1,000, which is a hard burden to govern. This burden will increase because if people can start building SaaS solutions, store data there, you need to come up with complete new frameworks to actually manage and decrease the risk. Not using it is not gonna help you because you're gonna fall behind your competitor. The question is, how can you get there? How can you learn? How can you control the risk? This is the question you gotta ask yourself. Like, how can we enable it for customers and for our users to learn as fast as possible? But on the other side, how can we contain the risk there? So because the amount of software solutions there will definitely increase over time. Now, if everybody builds and has endless solutions, there might be also a tipping point where, well, we build whatever has to be built on this world. But let's see where this goes. Now, let's take a look back where our contact form is going. So it is still thinking, and here we can just switch. And you can see here now that it just built a contact form. Now, if you had to code this in the past, if you had to build this, you probably contacted an agency, they had to block this. And of course, now you could say, hey, well, if this is filled out, send an API request to our CRM. Or if you want to get an email, you could probably contact this to an email address service, so on and so forth. So now what we actually saw is that this tool is super fast able to generate what we want it to generate, to iterate faster. Now, what we could do is we could say, well, we see that in our American market that English is really performing well. But if we're looking at our Spanish community, well, they're not converting that much. So this is why we're going to test if a Spanish form actually helps our conversion rate. This is how I just For example, translated, the iterate as fast as possible learning to outcompete our competitors, because competitors might have the same challenge, that Spanish population does not convert really well on English forms. With this, we actually enable the learning here. This is why I'm demoing this. And this is also something where you can manifest strategic impact. Now, of course, the question is, if this scales, if there's more of these solutions, how do you govern, how do you manage? This can be something for a second follow-up topic if this is interesting for you. We're super happy to offer a deep dive and also a course on this to learn more how you actually manage the scale and the output of just a solution that got AI coded. Now, let's go back to our third topic, which is risk. But risk is actually your enabler for security. Because without risk, you wouldn't build defensive walls, right? This is something since the medieval times when we have built castles. This is something a lot of us has been doing. We are decreasing risk by bringing in security. Now, just think about this. There's always in software open source solutions. Volvo is, for example, one of the great ones. I like to not choose a software one because not everybody relates to software as well, but everybody uses a car. And this 3-dot security belt has been shared publicly by Volvo because ultimately this patent was so important to save human lives that they said, well, we can't keep this private. We need to give this out. So this is something that's really, really important and also taken account towards vibe coding or AI coding. Because if this really scales, as we see it right now picking up, then there will be solutions that will be publicly available and that will secure your software stack. Now, let's go back even further. We see here now also an airbag. Same principle. Airbags have been securing lives for ages. So whenever there's risk, there is emerging technology to protect us. And we see this already happening in all these AI coding tools. They are starting to introduce static code scanners, token scanners, they're introducing review processes. So these things are already emerging. We can dive into this if we have more time at the end of this session to see how this works, for example, on Claude Code and Lovable. So now let's take another one, which is more science-based, because ultimately, over time, you can see that always risk decreases because there become more and more solution. So here, Yuval Levy actually wrote a really, really good article about this, where he can model the risk decrease over time across various solutions. And this is something that I encourage you to think of. Today, you might find it harder to decrease risk on AI-coded solutions, but ultimately, if you think about the long term, and if you're setting yourselves already on this path, you might feel uncomfortable. You might see this is a big strategic risk for your enterprise architecture. Yes, this is true. But if you find solutions, if you embrace the change, because progress is the only constant that keeps businesses growing and going, then you will find a solution how you can decrease it. And you're gonna be, again, one of the early leaders there. And usually, these companies that iterate faster win more market share. Now, let's repeat what we just learned. AI coding is definitely the future. Innovation becomes a commodity. You can build faster than your competitor and you can iterate to product market fit faster. Your micro SaaS costs go against zero because you can build your own tooling. You're becoming their competitor. The risk decreases always in the long run. Please start using AI coding today and start thinking about how can we contain it, what are use cases we can enable, and where is it nearly risk-free. And then you can still bring it into your core enterprise architecture once you validated all these risky pieces. Now, how to actually approach this. This was a lot of theory, a lot about why this is important. Now, I would like to talk about the 4 pillars that's actually driving this change. I've been talking a lot about technology, and I'm an absolute technology expert, and I like to code and I like to build solutions. But when it comes to bringing this into a company, it is more about change management. It is more about the people than anything else. And AI introduction is not a tool introduction. AI introduction into businesses is one of the biggest change management projects that you can do. In 2013, I did digital adoption CMS, LMS trainings, where it was about we want that our workforce digitalizes more, uses digital processes instead of using like printers and fax machines and things like this. So when we did this, we realized, well, you can't just go there and tell them, hey, please use your scanner, please use this photo OCR reader instead of the manual scan and then send it to the back office team. Just telling them to impose a role. Hey, please just use Claude or Lovable to build your process, to build your tool. This is not going to lead change. You have to talk about the change management in there. And this is about daily habits. This is about addressing fear and drive with inspiration. What I just did, giving you this example about the online form with your Spanish or English conversion challenge. And then with these programs, you can engage and you can actually help people grow. So how do you approach and utilize it? It is a change management project. If you really want to introduce this, you have to think about hackathons, you have to think about office hours, you have to think about people who can build, who are inspired, just like early adopters, who want to try this out, who can really go to their colleagues and show the value of this to really drive change. This is a change management program. Now, when we're thinking about this, I wrote it down so you can read it later in the slides when you get them shared. It is something I want to highlight again. AI introduction is a big change management program. We've seen that at Solonis. I've seen that at other companies. For example, my wife works also in AI change management industry, and we're talking a lot about this. And we see this all across the space. She's working at a consultancy company now, working in pharma IT, and we see this. And when I speak with my other peers in the AI industries, they all confirm this. We have one of our AI leaders in our Solonis company says, well, what I'm doing here more is not technology. I don't need an AI expert. I need someone who does change. And this is something I want to highlight today, especially when talking about AI coding, especially when talking about developers who are usually pretty smart and also change resistant. Now, how to actually start and how to actually get to this. I would like to pick with you an idea what you can do today to actually kick off this change. Can we use generative AI code to start working on a prototype in 48 hours? Just try it out. Just say, hey, who wants to participate can participate. We're going to give you the tooling. Please do not throw in customer data. Please do not throw in confidential business material. But if you're thinking about build us your next simple voting tool where we can register votes for our next company kickoff location. Could be something. Or our internal QR code generator. Let's say you're using a tool to generate QR codes for URLs and you're paying for this. I've seen this. Now you could just use your own tooling there. Quick 360 feedback form. Yeah? So if you say, for example, hey team, you can store this in your own Supabase, so you have this really secured. You can even process really confidential data there. Just make sure you do a proper code review, decreasing the risk here. And then you can gather 360 feedback. Or you could do a super simple team lunch order management, where you register all the restaurants and scrape all their offerings and put them on your order management. And people can just vote where they want to go today. So these are like super simple ideas to get you really engaged, to get you started. Of course, implementation takes more. Now, we're thinking about this. What does it actually mean for our B2B companies? They're really feeling the pressure. They got to innovate because it is so easy for you now to build this tooling. And this is how I want to end today's session. I would like you to be able to choose one of these solutions that we're going to build. Great. You want to actually do the QR code generator? Let's do the QR code generator. So one of the things before we end the session and start building the AI QR code generator, if you don't start using AI coding for anything, meanwhile your competitor will outpace you. And this holds true for any industry. Now, let's be at the top pace. Let's be the fastest and let's build some super simple QR code generator. Therefore, we are going to go back to Lovable and we're going to use build me a URL to QR code PNG file generator. I want just a simple text line with enter button returning PNG to download. And you don't even need to write it correctly. It will understand it because I said it once correct. And now what it will do, it will generate me this. And as the URLs are usually anyway public data, there's nearly no risk for marketing. Please do not use internal URLs, of course, but if you give this tool out, for example, for sales people sending emails are not encrypted usually, or marketing people, there's nearly no risk. Even if you go with your ITsec on this, I'm quite sure this could be a really, really good starting point for your business to actually use this. Now, while this generates, you can actually see what's going on and what happens. But you could also use tools like Claude Code. For today, we're not going to go into Claude Code because of the time, but I would love to show you how you could use Claude Code even with your Vercel setup, with your Supabase, hosted on a Docker machine, and really diving into development flows there, how your development team could pick this up. If this is interesting for you to dive even deeper, not only on the strategic impact, but really help on the change by leading with examples, I'm more than happy to do so. Now let's see what it did. And we're going to actually use this URL here, and there we go. It generated this. Now it has been downloading this, and you can actually see it opening here, QR code. And there we go. It opened the QR code. Now we have been proving that this can now save us $10. And this is so easy to do. Now let's go back to what I just said. If you need more and better examples or bigger change management programs, we're happy to guide you here through this process and really helping people to enable them to build hackathons together, to build also really deep sessions on how to prompt correctly, how to do architecture correctly, how to do product requirement documentations correctly, or